last 2 years building the relationships? Which minister in our government...
Okay, apparently we are streaming now. Hello, everybody. There is a press conference happening right now. So before we get into the show proper, the stuff that we want to talk about, which is recapping this week, we're gonna watch this and
we've seen more action from
see how the media asks Labour some fucking stupid questions.
Of Kirk Campbell, and we very much welcome the announcement that the United States is
and just for some context here, this is about the establishment of a Chinese military base on the Solomon Islands, correct?
I think so, yeah.
In the Pacific. But what is manifest here is that this government has dropped the ball and they have not built any relationships. And Scott Morrison's responsible for that. Maurice Payne is responsible for that.
Mr Miles, Anthony Albanese is in isolation. We're all pretending this is a normal campaign, but it's quite unusual.
It is an unusual campaign.
You're getting smashed up every day on the front page of the newspaper. Labor's not putting up a single point person in Mr Albanese's absence. Are you a liability to the Labor campaign at this point?
Look, you're right that it's an unusual campaign, but we were really aware about the prospect of one of our people coming.
That wasn't an aggressive question at all.
And obviously, particularly Anthony.
No, that was brutally aggressive. And this is what we've been talking about media bias the last few weeks. And this is great.
So balanced, Matt. It's so balanced.
Fair and balanced, Tommy. Fair and balanced.
Allow people to see the strong team that stands behind Anthony Albanese here today with both Katie and Jim, and you'll see others over the coming days, which will demonstrate there is a strong team behind Anthony. And you know, based on Anthony's health day to day, you'll see Anthony's voice as well appear over the course of the next week. But I mean, it is a very unusual circumstance. That said, we were aware of it, and it's going to be business as usual. I think
he could have done a better job of bringing forth how good the team is.
Yeah,
because he'd be like, yeah, if they're attacking me as hard as they are attacking Anthony Albanese, that means I'm just as good. What's up? Let's go.
Of this week,
yeah.
About as Anthony was making the case until the point that he.
I'm gonna re-up on some tea. Be right back.
That what we have is a Prime Minister who never takes responsibility. That what we have is a Prime Minister who always points the finger somewhere else and blames someone else. What we have is a Prime Minister who is always seeking to divide, always interested in the wedge, and is not about bringing people together. But that's what we are about. That's what Anthony Albanese's whole career has been about, and that's what he would look like if he's given the opportunity to be the Prime Minister of this country.
You mentioned a strong team. The common understanding in a campaign is that when a party starts reeling out the term a strong team, it's an admission that their leader is weak. Have you chosen the wrong leader? And if not, why not?
Anthony Albanese is going to be a fantastic Prime Minister of this country, given the opportunity. You know, we are in a position now during a pretty difficult 3 years in which it's been to lead the Labor.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry,
I think you need to explain to me what the fuck just happened, because I heard the laughing.
All right. So you just missed that, Tommy. Basically, they said to him, you keep bringing up the idea of a strong team, therefore, that must mean your leader is weak. How do you want to respond to that? And they're like, he's isolating with COVID. It was just one of the most biased fucking questions I've ever heard.
That's a leap in logic that is unfathomable. Holy shit.
It's a jump. It's one hell of a fucking jump. And I'm a bit flabbergasted, actually. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching these and I've been like recording them now on my computer. Yeah, no, it's bad, bro.
The party after the grief of the 2019 election and then during the pandemic. We're in the position now to be competitive in this election because of the leadership of Anthony Albanese. And he leads a strong and united team. Now, the fact that we are talking about a strong team now is because Anthony is in bed with COVID. Well, that's why we're making the comment, evidently. And we were aware that there was this possibility, and so we had a contingency in place to put that team on more display in the event that Anthony contracted the disease, which is now what's
Yeah.
occurred. But let's
Which makes
let's
fucking
not overreact
sense.
to all of this. Albo's voice is going to be in the media over the next few days. Albo's going to do his 7 days of isolation. I spoke with Albo today, and he's pretty chipper. And he's going to be back.
I want him to, like, these guys to say more. Like, we had a contingency plan for when he got COVID. We have the same level of contingency plans for the nation.
Joining Albanese across
I
many
would
different
also
places.
turn
A
around
lot
and
of
say,
people
which
are
is
talking
would
about
most
business
likely
owners,
the exact
how
same
hard it is
plans
to
that the
get
Liberal Party
workers
would
right
have.
now. Totally, right? So, have been advertising since January, February, haven't found anyone. Cafes, construction sites, whatever. What are you guys going to do? I know the apprentice thing is great. It's going to take years. What are you going to do now? Would you consider increasing the skilled immigration cap?
Well, in terms of immigration, we don't seek to create...
like, the jobs you're talking about aren't skilled immigration stuff. Like, people at cafes and shit, that's unskilled labour. What the fuck are you talking about?
Around the migration intake, both in terms of...
Because they're trying to build their sound bites, they're trying to build their headlines. That one specifically would be Labor wants to bring more immigrants to the country, which is a hot button issue for Australians. That's what they're trying to do here.
Training of people, making sure that we are addressing and focusing on those areas of skill shortage, that we can get skilled people into the workforce quickly. But having said all that, the reason we're in the situation that we are in right now is because Scott Morrison went missing. Scott Morrison and his government went missing for the last 9 years. And they went missing by cutting $3 billion of funding out of our vet system, which means that we have less trainees and apprentices today than we did in 2013. The international border being closed has illuminated the issue, but the reason why we have a skills crisis right now is because we're not training enough Australians, and that's because Scott Morrison and his government dropped the ball once again.
What about the businesses now who are struggling right now? What are you going to do if you get into government in 4 weeks? Apprentices and takes are going to take a while.
That's in 4 weeks. What do you want them to do? Go back in time?
We will work on our package in terms of free TAFE. We will also be talking about issues around micro-credentialing and...
The businesses right now needed this government to act. That's the point.
That does enable us to get people with specific skills into jobs in a quicker time frame, because you're right to point out that it does take time to give rise to a trade qualification. I think what we also need to be doing...
why you are being aggressive with the party that isn't in power.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fine. It's fine. It's to a certain extent, it's fine if you're being aggressive in terms of their plans. But this is obviously like they can't do anything. They're not in fucking power. I don't.
Yeah.
It's like the aggression there doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, what you could be like, well, what the fuck are you gonna do about it when you're in power, right? Like, when you go in, what's your actual plan? You can do that kind of shit, but like, fuck.
Yep.
These things are struggling now. What are you going to do in 4 weeks? What? 4 weeks? Like, what the fuck?
You get that flow of people from schools. I think that it has been a missing ingredient actually around the country to get the flow of people from schools into TAFE but into apprentices. We're very keen to work on that as well. So we will be acting immediately. But let's be clear. The reason we've got an issue right now is because of the degree to which Scott Morrison and his government have dropped the ball over the last 9 years. That is why we have less trainees and apprentices today than we did in 2013.
Can I ask you a question about one of your signature policies on carbon emissions? You have a market mechanism and effectively a baseline which the nation's biggest emitters effectively can emit so much carbon up to a certain threshold. Can I ask you about coal mines? Will coal mines be forced to buy carbon credits if they go beyond that threshold? And what do you estimate the cost of a carbon credit will be if they have to buy?
Well, let's be clear on this. We have we have the most detailed modelling around the proposals that we have put in place that an opposition has ever produced. The most detailed modelling. To make sure that we have a realistic pathway to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, but getting to that target of a 43% reduction. we are really clear about where we need to go, and we have been completely transparent, more than any opposition has ever been, in terms of the information that it's put forward.
In being transparent, will they have? Now you're the deputy leader. Will they have to buy carbon credits? No, you're the deputy leader. You don't need the shadow treasurer. Surely you would know. No, Mr.
Why would he know that? That's a fine. Like like how much a carbon credit is going to cost and shit. That's like an economics finance position. Like leaders are managers. They don't need to know those fucking bullshit statistics, man.
And they're also very worried about more of what happened to Albanese in the first week of the election, where they were they didn't have those statistics right away.
Yeah,
so doing
this
quick switch, it means you're going to get the right information. They're going to avoid that gotcha journalism.
But it's good. Like I like it. Labor have been Albanese and stuff have been doing this for a while. Like Albanese will be there, and then I can't remember the Burke will just like come in and be like, yo, I'll answer that goddamn question. It's really cool to see. I really like it. Because like what you'll notice if you watch this stuff, in the Morrison press conferences, when he's asked questions, he'll just do the simple waffling on and stuff like that. But everyone around him, no one is really willing to jump in unless they're specifically called out to answer questions.
Well, it's because they want to ditch their leadership, Tommy. Like they know that they're probably sunk, and they're the Liberal power brokers are getting ready to ditch Morrison. Yeah,
what's annoying is like no one's going to see that the subtleties in that, and as we will see later, when no one's really going to point that out as the differences between the two.
I'm asking the deputy leader because Mr. Albanese isn't here. Does the deputy leader know if they will have to buy carbon credits? It's a simple question. He's behind you. Can we not ask him?
Well, the point that we have made repeatedly, and the point that Pat...
ask your average punter on the street whether or not a company is going to need to buy carbon credits. Simple question. They'll answer it. Fucking ridiculous.
Errol and others were making during the course of the week is that our policy is designed not to disadvantage our exporters against the countries and the companies with which they compete around the world. And that goes to the core of your question. But what Richard is saying is that we have put out a detailed policy, the safeguard mechanism, which we have adapted and adopted from the government itself, means that 215 of the biggest emitters will reduce their emissions in line with the safeguard mechanism. Now, the best outcome from our point of view is that businesses reduce their emissions in line with that timetable and that time frame and that safeguard mechanism. Ideally, businesses would do that. Now, I spend a lot of time with miners around Australia. I had a hookup with the mining industry yesterday. I think I've been through regional Queensland, 60 visits to 29 different towns
Morrison right now,
alone. And what we have said to coal communities and to coal miners and people who work in this industry is that our climate change policy is designed to leverage and maximise our traditional strengths, not abandon them. And that's what our policy is about. And that's why the modelling that Richard referred to, the more than 600,000 jobs created by our climate change policy, 5 out of every 6 of those are in the regions. And that goes to the question that you're asking.
I'm now going to ask the Deputy Leader again. Well, Deputy Leader, will they have to buy carbon credits if they go beyond their baseline? And what will those carbon credits cost?
Well, the question has been answered. The question has been answered.
Answer it again. Will they have to buy carbon credits if they go beyond?
Man, no one goes this hard on fucking
Morrison. The question
has
been answered.
I know. It's really hard to watch.
The coal industry.
I mean, and sadly, the headline is going to be today: Deputy Minister stumped by question refuses to answer.
Can't answer question on carbon credits. Yeah.
That's what it's going to be all day. I mean, look, there is an answer there, which is most likely yes. Coal producers who go over their threshold will have to buy carbon credits, which is essentially dumping money back into the tax system, because we'll need that to counteract the effects of their industry. That's the simple answer. But if they answer that, it's going to turn into Labor wants to destroy coal industry in Australia.
Yeah, it'll be worse. So,
so it's better to avoid.
So again, Labor being the pragmatist are like, well, this is the least worst option, so we'll take it.
It's strategically smart during an election.
Yeah.
Whenever I can.
Me too.
Very kind of a bit of a hyper-local question with a national implication, though.
Yeah.
There was a story yesterday and today in the newspaper as well about 500 LNP-branded postal vote applications being dumped in a wheelie bin.
Yeah.
This speculation in the coalition camp that perhaps the postie was union aligned, or there's some kind of union campaign to do this kind of thing. Do you have any knowledge of that? And have you guys written to AusPost as well, seeking clarification on this issue?
No, there's no evidence that that's the case. I'm not aware of that allegation that you've just raised. But
is this not a matter for the AEC and not for campaigning politicians?
I would say 100% it's up to the AEC, and it's 100% up to the post office to regulate and enforce. So I haven't heard
we're
about
even
this
assuming
one.
that this is
one
true
happen?
and not just a bullshit story, which we've seen plenty of times. Like the stuff coming out of the Trump era of people burning votes and shit. It's very suspicious that this stuff keeps coming up now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's a Murdoch tactic. It's a tactic that Trump played. The suggestion that votes are going to somehow disappear. Australia has one of the safest elections on the planet. And we also have, due to our nature of compulsory voting, we have one of the best cross sections. So the idea that they're planting the seeds that the election is somehow stolen, it's a pen and paper election. It's just not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
The fact obviously
this it's setting off some alarm bells for what's going to happen in the future, I think.
Yeah.
This stuff wasn't around in the last election, though I haven't been paying that much attention. So
no, it wasn't during the last election. We've never worried about voter fraud in this country.
But I will say this. What happened there was completely unacceptable. Completely and utterly unacceptable. We need to know what's happened here. We need to know that it won't happen again. And we need to know that Australia Post is adequately resourced to deal with the extra pressure that comes at election time. I've spoken to Michelle Rowland about it this morning. We haven't yet spoken to Australia Post itself. We consider it to be deeply concerning, completely and utterly unacceptable. It can't happen again, and we need to make sure that the resources are there so that it doesn't happen again.
6 of the last 8 days of the campaign.
Last question about the political parties using these how to vote cards. They send them to voters, they harvest the information for the party purposes, and then they forward it on. Will Labor move first and say that you won't use this practice in future?
Look, this is a long-standing practice which is consistent with electoral law. If the electoral law changes, then we'll change how we go about it. Thanks very much. Thank you.
That was Richard Marles, Jim Chalmers,
All right.
and Katie.
That's it. We can stop covering that shit show.
It was it was good to jump in there because you get to see a couple of things. You get to see just how aggressive they are. You get to see what the Labor's Plan B campaign strategy is, and I happen to think it's a great strategy. They're doing everything right. They're doing some of the things that I was talking about last week. Attack Morrison, hit him hard, keep coming back to why he has failed. Avoid gotcha journalism, which they did with the Cole question. All of that, I think it does lead credence to the fact that their plan B is strong. And I think that they can easily fill in for Albo for, the couple of days that he's sick. Now, one of the questions, because this is obviously the biggest story of this week, Tommy, and I wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah.
With Morris, with Albanese being sick, he's out for at least a week. We do know that COVID can kill. What do you think happens if Albanese does not recover in time from COVID, or, even worse, what if he dies during the middle of an election campaign? That would be unprecedented in this country.
Yeah, look, I have no idea. I assume it would be bad. But it depends.
We're essentially we run on a party system. So I would imagine
but everything's getting more presidential.
Would then take over the Yeah, absolutely. But I assume that the deputy would take over the campaign.
Yeah. Oh, look,
switch.
Here's a hot take, right? If that happens, and they give it enough time, Labor's going to win.
You think so? Because I think the opposite. I think if they lose Albo it will lead even more into the like, we don't know this man, therefore we can't vote for this party.
I don't think. Well, I don't think that'll play as well because they have the length of time to do that. But here's the main thing, and it's basically because Queensland votes tribalistically, right? They voted for Kevin Rudd because he was a Queenslander, and so they'll actually is Jim Chalmers deputy or is he just the finance? Because Jim Chalmers is from Queensland.
Yeah, Jim is the finance minister.
I'm gonna look this up. Jim Chalmers. Sure. Chalmers was cited in 21 as the most senior member of the Labour right faction in Queensland. After the 29th, Chalmers publicly considered running Bill. Okay, he ruled out standing for the deputy leadership. So now he's shadow treasurer. Okay, he's the treasurer.
Yep.
There was something like Friendly Daughters brought it up, like the point that if they've got someone from Queensland in there and in the leadership position, they'll win. The Queenslanders will just vote for him. So there's that. That's
crazy, isn't it?
I mean, look, it makes sense. People are pretty.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to be as informed as we are, so that's how that'll go down. But otherwise, I think that it probably won't matter that much because the way the media is framing Albanese anyway, he's basically, in a way, a non-entity.
Yeah.
And all of the other Labour leaders, like Penny Wong, Tanya Plibersek, etc., they're all quite good. Like, they're very competent people, and they're, fairly clean politically. So it probably wouldn't matter all that much. And the same lines, the same messages, and the same lines would be said by everyone. Like, everyone's pretty unified on that kind of front. So
I wonder if they'd even get a sort of sympathy bump as well if Albo died. Like if Labor, then they come together, they unite with their leader gone, they still push through the campaign. It's almost like the underdog story, and people love a good underdog story. It's just it's very interesting to think about. Not that I want to see anything happen to anyone. I don't want Anthony Albanese to die of COVID, but we are living in unprecedented times. Like, there's never been a moment where a political leader is like, look, I have to take the week off because I'm sick. Even when they're running high flus and temperatures, like, they'll continue to compete. Obviously, the optics would be fucking horrendous if he kept doing media conferences while he had COVID. So they've done the right thing.
Yeah, well, the only reason he's not doing that is because it's against the laws. Like, he has to self-isolate.
Absolutely, which is what we're doing right now. Self-isolating.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look, the rules for us I don't think count as anymore because it's been a week since our incident. But yes, that is so Anthony Albanese getting COVID, like we talked about, and a pretty extreme example there, but I think what's interesting is that what that's going to do, we're going to assume that he's going to make it out of this because it seems like he's going to be fine. This seems to be a good thing for the Labour Party, I think. They can't spin this in the right way. Like, the media being very aggressive. Like, I think more than I expected about this, because I think they see this as a threat to the LNP, because there's no reason for them to go this hard at it. Right? Yeah. Like, you saw the line of questioning. And what I was talking to you about this last night, Matt, and it was like, oh, I haven't set this up. God damn it. Okay, hold on. I was talking to you about this last night, Matt. God damn it. Stop being annoying. God damn it!
Do you want me to
so I was talking about
move
this last
over
night.
there?
Yeah, it's annoying because Zoom, like, it doesn't remember any of my goddamn settings. Yeah, that'll do. Whatever, you can be like that. That's fine.
I'll shuffle it a little bit. There we go.
I was talking to you about this last night, and we were. I think you were questioning whether this would be good for Anthony or for the Labour Party, I guess. And I was like, I think it'll be good because Scott Morrison cannot attack Albanese.
Yeah.
And if we look at, actually, I had the this article by Michael West, and the title is "Murdoch's Mad Labour Hatchet Job and Albo's COVID," and he's basically saying what I was telling you. Anthony Albanese going down with COVID is already playing well for Labour. Scott Morrison has few votes to gain by hammering a sick guy, and it leaves a team versus team matchup rather than man versus man. What have we here? And it basically just goes down the line of like the players, and you'd put the Labour candidate against the other ones any day in terms of their portfolios. Yep. So
they're also united. So it's like right now you're dealing with the Liberal Party that is getting ready to ditch their leader. They're getting ready to jettison him. They're getting ready to reform. It's the same thing that happened essentially in New South Wales, where the Liberal leaders knew that Perriott wasn't going to be the most successful candidate they put forward. They were looking to eliminate the ultra-conservative faction within their party. So the New South Wales Proud Brokers were like, well, we'll put him forward. If he succeeds, he succeeds. If he doesn't, we can get rid of someone we don't want. And this is exactly the same thing that is happening with Scott Morrison. It's why his campaign advisors have told him, don't make this election about you as a leader. Make this about your party. Make it about the Liberals' economic strength. That's what they've been pushing this entire election campaign. Because very rarely do you ever see a leader stand up the front of a press conference and say, it's not about me. And that, that's what's going on there. So obviously there's not going to be unity. There's not going to be that good, strong team reaction. Whereas with the Labor Party, they're demonstrating we are a team, we're working together. Whether our leader is here or not, you're going to have a strong party and you're going to have good party discipline. So I think this is going to, like you said, Tommy, when I asked that question last night, I was a bit on the fence about it, but I happen to agree with you. I think this is going to be one of the, it's probably going to be a strong point of Labor's campaign. It's quite cool that they've managed to spin it this way.
But yeah, but as per the media, they're going hard on them. They're going like this, ridiculous. This is, it seems like this is front page shit. Like, this is fucking extraordinary, dude. But yeah, this is the
good old Australian
current state of the play that we're dealing with. Now, one thing that I wanted to bring up was them not. So this is when Albo was still in action, because we're covering the week, and this happened on like Tuesday or Thursday or something before he got COVID. And this is something you just won't see in any of the media analysis or anything. So I want to just let this play out, because I recorded this on the ABC News live YouTube thing, and I was just watching it at the time, and I was like, man, he is going off. This is sick. And then there's just no media coverage of it. So I want you to watch it, because I think it's quite like a populist thing to do. And in any like normal media environment, like a left-wing aligned thing would have been talking about this.
On the aged care issue, our 5-point plan is directly arising from the Aged Care Royal Commission. That is a nurse in every nursing home, 24/7. That is 215 minutes of care. That is increased wages for people in the aged care sector. That is better food and nutrition, and we've announced a specific plan with the Maggie Beer Foundation to deliver that. And the fifth and really important point is transparency and accountability. We want every dollar that goes into aged care to go into better care and better food and better outcomes for our older Australians. And with regard to the recommendations of the Royal Commission, my observation is this. Why does the government set up a Royal Commission and then ignore the central recommendations in it? The central recommendations of the Aged Care Royal Commission, in which aged care residents, aged care providers, family members, people made these submissions about the crisis in aged care, and what they got from this government was contempt. Nothing to assist workers in the sector. And you talk about the frustration that workers are feeling. Workers are leaving the sector. Think about this. All of you here today and the workers here today will have parents, will have uncles and aunties, will have other, if they're really young, they might have grandparents. But guess what? It might be us one day, and there won't be an aged care sector to look after them unless we do something about this, and unless we do something about it now.
Mr. Avenue,
the title of the report is neglect.
Mr. Avenue.
Neglect, in one word. In one word. And what we have is a neglect of a Royal Commission that has been titled neglect.
Mr. Avenue.
Neglect from this government.
Mr. Avenue.
We have made very clear what our plan is on aged care, and quite frankly, when I sat in the budget lockup with Jim and the team on the Tuesday night, because I did have a draft of the speech ready to go for Thursday, I was stunned when I asked, has anything at all happened on aged care? And this is a government that has $70 billion of additional spending with no offsets between my EFO in December and their March budget. But they couldn't find a single dollar. Aged care workers are despairing. This is tough work. It's physically demanding. They have faced with circumstances whereby they're in an aged care home and they have 3 buzzers going at once. Which person do they go and lift up? They have people who are living in their own soil, unable to be changed for days. You have 50%, the Royal Commission found this. This isn't Labor Party versus Liberal Party. This is a Royal Commission established by the government, found that over 50% of aged care residents were not getting the nutrition that they need. They're literally starving. There is a crisis in this country, and that's what this election is about. This election is about whether we have a government that looks after people, or whether we have Scott Morrison who goes missing unless there's a photo op, unless there's a campaign. You'll see Scott Morrison doing photo ops every day. Good pictures, I've no doubt they'll deliver on that. But he doesn't deliver on his key responsibility. He always blames someone else. And the aged care crisis, of which a government member said to me, oh, but there aren't any votes in it. Well, I'll tell you what, this needs addressing, and I make no apologies for addressing it.
Mr. Albanese, just back to...
Like, the amount of passion that he's displaying here should be newsworthy, in my opinion. And like, nothing he has said is incorrect. He's basically just saying what the Royal Commission has said. So it, like, and I have not seen this. I have seen none of this make it anywhere in any mainstream media places. And
it hasn't, and it won't. I mean, we've discussed this before. The Australian media landscape is it's biased. It's been corrupted by people who want to profit off the essentially the suffering of the Australian people. And so that's why you're not going to see that. I mean, when I was a kid, you would have seen it, absolutely. But, we're talking 20 years ago, and the media landscape has completely changed into what it is today. I love what he's doing. Like, this is exactly what I was saying was lacking last week. The fact that it was week 2 now, and here they're all being aggressive. This is what they need to be. The sad thing is, though, even with this sort of level of like aggressive attack, they still can't get media play, which is just outstanding. Like it's just
like you put that out there in, like, beaming into those aged care facilities and into to anyone who has interacted with that system, and that'd work. Like that'd reach them, because that's the stuff that they're dealing with. And this guy is clearly showing the frustrations that they would have So it'd be incredible reach, but it's just, fuck. It's just, they just won't let it get out there. And I don't, it's so annoying, dude.
When you look at the polling data as well, generally speaking, people 55 and up are generally voting Conservative. This sort of information getting to that demographic would probably change a few minds. And, that's why they continue to vote Conservative, is because they're not getting that information. And it's the Conservative parties that are going to affect their future. As Anthony Albanese said, we will be in this position. Our family members will be in this position. And, the fact that people in that demographic continue to vote Conservative is simply for the fact that they're not getting that information, because it's going to be them that are going to be worst affected when it's their turn to get into, a retirement home, which for some of those people, 55 to 65, that could be the next 10 years. So it's absolutely startling that they can't get access to that information, and that's why they continue to vote for people who aren't in their best interests.
Yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to show that clip because he's literally, him and Labour, this campaign, are literally doing every fucking thing correctly.
Yeah.
Except for that, I guess, except for that one slip up at the start, maybe, but Jesus Christ. There is, if we're going to talk about equivalent sort of fucking gaffes, here's this. Check this shit. This is incredible, dude.
Those portfolios, Defence, Treasury, who are going to be in those portfolios. Defence, Treasury, Finance, of course, Mr. Speaker, all of these, Foreign Affairs, very important portfolios. And I believe it is I've been the Social Services Minister, and the issue, Mr. Speaker, here we go, I'm back in Parliament, there we go, that the issue is...
See, now, if there was leftist media in this country, okay, or if you were going to provide some sort of balance because you attacked Albo so goddamn much, this is fucking ripe for the picking, okay? This shit is someone showing cognitive decline. This guy thinks he's still in Parliament. Because this is what happens. And I think they go on to say...
Really? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, once again, the Leader of the Opposition has come forward, Mr. Speaker, and outlined things not as they were, Mr. Speaker, and seek to misrepresent, Mr. Speaker, the remarks I made on this.
So out on the hustings, outside, he still thinks he's in Parliament. Right? Yeah, so you could absolutely attack him for being, hey, that's a gaffe, but, yo, do you know where you are right now, Mr. Morrison? Yep. Do we need to take you to, do you have like a son that, we can talk to put you to bed or something? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yep. You could.
But
you
this gets no fucking play, dude.
Yeah, if Albanese had done that, that is pretty much what you would have seen. What's that aside, and I totally agree with the point that you're making, but that aside, that little performance there, it worries me. And it worries me not so much for the idea that the Scott Morrison has dementia, but it worries me in the respect that this is a man who is simply just like, he is in that constant cycle of just reciting shit. He's a robot. Right, there is no passion, there's no emotion there. It's just Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. All that's saying to me is every time that he feels that he has to engage in these sort of arguments, all he can manage is the same rehearsed bullshit. He is always in that mode, and that is alarming. That he can't just reach people. We all fub. I fub all the time, but when you are standing in front of a media conference, you should be sort of focused in on that and not just falling into repetitive politics, which is what his brain seems to be geared towards. Just repeat the same shit again and again and again.
And it wasn't just like, he didn't just say Mr. Speaker once. According to the title of this video, he said it 3 times. And it seemed like the way they edited it, it was like a sustained period where he was just in, I'm in Parliament mode. Like Again, this guy is a politician and literally nothing else. That's it. Like he just does the lines. He just waffles on, doesn't really answer the questions, and then just it's so exasperating. I can't.
It's frustrating because for some reason the Australian public in a lot of cases can't sort of seem to see through this. It's like,
well, they're also not shown it, so
they're not shown it. Yeah, 100%, Tommy. I will say this much, like the news.com.au did actually publish a story on this, which
yeah, but news.com.au, like, I assume, seconds. Yeah, what did they say about it? Did you see it?
Yeah, they just they sort of wrote it up as a sort of this is a fun sort of jokey story, which is what they generally do. It's kind of fascinating to watch. It's always fun to check out the comment sections on those as well, which I will say have gone a lot more quiet since Russia and the Ukraine have been at it. Which is one thing that we talked about a few streams ago, and I think it still resonates now, is there's a lot more dissenting opinion on social media. There's a lot more dissenting opinion in the comment sections, because finally we're actually getting mostly unfiltered Australian social media use, which normally they have to compete with Russian bots. But yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, media bias. I think like this was meant to be our like 4 to 6 weeks of election coverage, and all it's going to turn into is just like, this is how fucking biased the media is in this country. And I was talking to a relative the other day about it, and I said, can you think of one single positive Albo story that you've seen over the last 2 weeks? And I said, let me even further qualify that point. Have you seen a story about Albo in the last 2 weeks? And that relative of mine was very hard pressed to come up with any examples. And I'm like, well, there you go. Shouldn't you have that information in front of you?
Yeah. Yeah, like you'd be hard pressed to find anything even neutral at this point.
You would.
Which is ridiculous. But I want to, so there's been a lot of talk this week about how the campaign has become very scare tactic-y. And this is analysis from the ABC, from PK, who is... I used to like this person before I started, I think, being more critical of the ABC, and especially before the election started. But now I'm like, holy shit, we're fucked. There is like almost no one in the ABC that's good. So anyway, I'm just gonna let this play out, and then I will, I guess, talk. Then we can talk about it. She's basically this is after the press conferences by the two people, like just after that one that I showed you before with Albanese. So yeah, her and Greg Jennett, I think, are talking about or just analysing what's been happening.
And on asylum seeker policy, I just want to give you my verdict of the campaign so far. Terrible. A terrible campaign, which has so far been not on big ideas. Even this Solomon's discussion we're having, this is something that's happening between the Solomon Islands and China that we were unable, clearly, so was the US, can I say, to stop or obstruct.
Okay. The US, like, they essentially rely on us to do that job here in terms of like US foreign policy. Right.
Yeah, it's
so
our
to say
region.
that the US, the US couldn't even do anything here. Yeah, that's because we were supposed to fucking do that. Okay. So I don't like that.
But we haven't been having the big debates. What we have is scare campaign and then both sides trying to scare the bejesus out of voters to try to win. Now, Labor has been trying to mount a scare around industrial relations. Some of our viewers will think, hang on a minute, well, some of their points are accurate. I'll tell you one that isn't on the basis of what the government tells me, the boot test. They say the government wants to get rid of the better off overall test.
So why would you trust the government to tell you whether or not they're fucking something up?
Not only
why
that,
would you just uncritically believe their claims?
Yeah. Not only that is that the journalist there is essentially showing her cards and suggesting that her talking points are coming directly from the government instead of doing what a journalist should do, which is fact check. The government is telling me...
she's fact checking Labor, but she's not going the extra step in fact checking her government sources or whatever, right? But like, I don't know. she is connected to like one of the issues with these politicians is on these journalists is that they have to be friends with politicians in order to get them on their side and to get stories and all that other kind of shit out of them. So there's an externality there of that system that leads to negative outcomes, I think, in this case.
Yeah, well, we talked about that on the last stream, Tommy, when I said journalists can be one or two things. They can be a commentator at a horse race and they can comment on it as the horse race happens, or they can do their fucking job, which is ask the questions that the people, the Australian community, wants them to be asking and hold people to account. And unfortunately, we have more of the later in Australian journalism at the moment.
Yeah.
This is something that came up in that media conference with Anthony Albanese just then. So if you could put this in some context.
Yeah, so this was raised and the government's the opposition is going hard on this issue on industrial relations, saying the government wants to cut your wages and conditions. A really potent line again and a big scare. Now, the government did propose to get to suspend the Better Off Overall test during the pandemic because businesses were struggling. The government now says, although I don't think they've made it clear enough if they want to kill this scare campaign, I believe the Prime Minister will do that today, by the way. It's my prediction at this press conference. He will put this to bed and say the Better Off Overall test remains. We won't kill it off. But Labor's saying that's their agenda, that they haven't ruled it out. That's their scare campaign. Wait, there's more. There's a scare campaign, though, from the Coalition on a range of issues about Labor. One of them is boat arrivals, and we talked about that yesterday. Now, when I interviewed David Littleproud, who is the Deputy Leader of the Nationals, on that, Barnaby Joyce says even if they lose, he wants to stay Nationals leader. It's been revealed today, so, breaking news there. Interesting. But David Littleproud, I put to him, hang on a minute, we're sick of what are you scaring everyone for? Yes, Labor's scaring, but so are you. And on boats, why are you doing that? And this is what he had to say.
I don't know why they're showing this part of it, though.
Wants to be making inflated comments at a time when what is needed is leadership and calm, and to work collaboratively with them to get an understanding before they make any derogatory comments of what's in that agreement. And you shouldn't jump the gun in foreign diplomacy, and that should be a lesson. Even as little old agriculture minister, I know that you should do this maturely. You should work through this with your partners and particularly the nation in question before you give any gratuitous advice from the sidelines. That's a responsible thing to do. Otherwise, you risk escalating matters. And that's why we need to do this not only with the United States, but with other Pacific nations. And Penny Wong just needs to calm down. Well, it is a scare campaign because if you take away one element of the three elements of sovereign borders, which is the temporary protection visas, you open up the business model, and that should scare every Australian. And
so you want people to be scared?
Well, if you're opening up our borders again and you have people coming here illegally, but it's not just about them coming here illegally, PK, it's also about the 1,300 souls that were lost.
Yeah,
I think any human being would be upset to think that if you open up a business model again that would put other people's lives in the risk, no matter the nationality.
The business model, that's what
but they're taking away that they are not going to support temporary protection visas, and that's the challenge that we have.
You heard him there. I said, do you want people to be scared? And he said, it is a scare campaign. Yes, it is. I don't know if he misspoke there, but he's kind of conceding it. I think a campaign that is based on fear is the worst campaign. Where are the ideas about a better future for Australians and actually prosperity and working together? These are the kinds of ideas I think Australians would perhaps like to hear.
And what?
Yes. Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't it be good if the Australians could actually hear the good policies and the good ideas, PK, person who works in the media industry?
Absolutely.
There is a reason why Labor have not put any their grand visionary policies, because every time they fucking do that, they get destroyed for it by the media. And so if the media are setting the rules of engagement, which is to not have those kind of things, to incentivize scare campaigns, then obviously campaigns predominantly will be scare campaigns. Have a little bit of goddamn introspection into your own goddamn field. But this is always framed at blaming the players. It's ridiculous.
It is. But not only that, though, the idea that a scare campaign is not a viable political strategy is almost laughable in itself.
Well, she's not talking about it being not viable, but she's just talking about how she doesn't like it. It's not like optimistic, and it's not policy and all that, you know. It's not the ideal of what a campaign should be, which is true, but whose fault is that? Like, she's framing this as the party's fault. I mean, the Liberals don't have any policies. So that's why they resorted to scare campaigns. They did that last election. They do it in this election. They don't, you know, do any work. So they don't have anything to do except scare and do that kind of shit. Labor, on the other hand, went to the last election. A lot of good shit got voted out because of it. So, well, they didn't get in. They lost that campaign because of it. And part of that was because of the fucking media. And so why would they do that again? Why would they just choose to lose power based on your fucking idealism? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because it's like, it's like this is meant to be analysis, right? But they can't seem to, like, she's working for the ABC at the moment, right? You could very well, as the ABC, go, hey, and the Murdoch press aren't helping because of what happened last time, all that other kind of shit. You could mention that and bring up how the media is informing how all this stuff goes down. But she's not doing that.
No.
And no one is. And like the ABC at this point in time, because they get attacked, there's no reason that they need to hold this level of decorum in this field, because the Murdoch press, Sky News, will attack them relentlessly, right? They're basically just sitting there and taking it because of like an ideological journalism is better than this kind of bullshit. But if you want to actually be balanced, you just attack them back for being fucking shit. And if you want people to stop doing the bad shit, like scare campaigns, call them out on it, okay?
Yeah.
And she's been doing that to a certain extent. Like the ABC are bringing up the fact that everything's a fucking scare campaign. Stop doing scare campaigns, right? But I will note that during a press conference earlier, when Scott, like, she was analyzing Scott Morrison's press conference, and she just kept saying how, isn't it amazing that Scott Morrison is able to just always, like, deflect from the question and then get it onto, you know, his talking points. He's really good at just hammering home the talking points. And I'm like, why are you saying that this is a good thing? Like, sure, you can talk about how good, like, the skill is, I suppose. If it's bullshit. Like, anyone, you could do it, Matt. You do it all the time. But, like, if it's, like, that kind of dodging of questions, like, Labour just did it then. And I assume, because I find it frustrating, journalists find it very fucking frustrating. If you want to not have that behavior, you need to call them out on it. Just cut the motherfuckers off, right? If they start just waffling and be like, just cut in, like those reporters did for Labour, do that for Morrison. But no, they're praising Morrison for those tactics instead of chastising him for it. So he's able to get away with it, and he keeps just doing it all the time because it keeps working. So you only have yourself to blame for this kind of bullshit.
Yep. Yeah. It says something about the sorry state of affairs that we're in when it comes to media bias in this country. And, I think it's very evident. Again, though, like, I go back to, like, using scare tactics, using scare campaigns. We're probably in one of the most destabilized eras of my lifetime, of, people's lives in the last 60 odd years. This is a very, very scary time for a lot of people. And we're in a really fucked situation. So I can absolutely understand why the Labor Party is saying, hey, do you want your grandmother, like, living in her own shit? Maybe we need to change that. Maybe we need to bring in better policy, and maybe we need to inject money into the healthcare system and the retiree system. And it's like, if that is a scare campaign and you do feel afraid by that, well, you fucking bloody well should be, as should every Australian. Yeah. So, it's probably disingenuous as well for this journalist to be saying, hey, they can't use these scare campaigns. They should be about, what is the hope for the future? Well, it's a really scary time, and there are really scary situations going on, and maybe we should address those first and try and restabilize the foundation of this country, rather than switching gears and being like everything is beautiful rainbows if you elect us. How about we're all in the shit? This is how we're going to fix it. And I think that's a very viable campaign strategy. And I think this is obviously coming from a person that is somewhat out of touch as well. And I think that may apply to a lot of journalists at the moment as well, is there's a significant societal difference between us and them. And they're part of this system where they're made wealthy, their billionaires are making millionaires, or in this case, at least, millionaires in this country are making these journalists very, very financially comfortable. And I think that also plays into this system where they're not really answering to us, they're answering to their corporate paymasters, or they're answering to the people that provide them their jobs. And like you said, Tommy, that is essentially the Liberal government maintains contact with the media, as I imagine the Labor Party does as well. But political
I assume not nearly to the same extent, though, but sure, yeah.
No, yeah. Well, we have to be a bit fair as well when we're discussing these things. But it's look, I'm going
to say, like, Labor's coal policy is not that progressive.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, we're not going to close down any coal plants. They have to keep the mining vote in, and also the miners in jobs. So like, I would like it to be further along, but I mean, if they don't get into power, it doesn't matter. So they can say that line. It's fine for me.
Yeah, 100%. You have to take some of those hits. But the point I'm trying to get here is that the journalists, the current field of journalists, they need these contacts. They need to be able to communicate directly, because again, they're commentators on a horse race. So they need the horses and the jockeys to be talking to them quite often, so that they have something to write about, so that they can afford their mortgage on probably their rather elaborate Sydney properties. That's the problem. That's ultimately the problem that we're in at the moment, is that if all of Australia's information is coming from these individuals that have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, all we're going to get is the status quo. And I think you're 100% right in calling these people out as often as you do, because it is something that needs to be called out. And thankfully, and it's also why there's an attack on citizen journalists at the moment. It's like media on all sides will often go after Jordan Shanks, but it's like Jordan Shanks is one of the very, very few people who are actually actively, bringing these very interesting stories to the Australian public. And they hate that, because that's what they should be doing. That's what they should be doing. Jordan Shanks is asking questions that the Australian people would like to know about the people in power in this country. The current state of media are commentators on a horse race. That's why you have to be so careful.
Yeah, and it's really annoying, because the ABC used to be an institution like that, and there are still there's one person that's still doing that job at the ABC, but they've basically just become regurgitating Murdoch lines, just in a more fair and balanced way. Right, that's it. Like, they basically just regurgitate the press. They keep coming out, like with the bullying scandal and the Albanese gaffe. Both times they had to get some of the journalists to come out and justify their coverage of it, because they were getting flack. They're like, "Yo, why are you doing this? This is fucking stupid." And both times they're like, "Oh yeah, well, no, we have to, because the other news coverages are doing it." And I'm like, "What?" No, but you're a different institution. Shouldn't you be? Anyway, whatever. I want to bring up, so going back to the scare campaigns very quickly. They keep attacking Labor on the Medi-scare stuff. And I just want to point out, like, sometimes, like, a scare campaign is generally one, the reason why it has a negative connotation is because it's, generally speaking, unwarranted. Okay? But this is a flashback to 2021, and the coalition basically sneaking in 900 changes to the basic safety net that people rely on. So there was some, like, 900 changes that the coalition snuck in that basically got rid of a bunch of stuff that people relied on in terms of Medicare coverage, right? So this government, so Labor's scare campaign, that the government, wants to basically get rid of Medicare is evident, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing it. And in general, this is how they're not going to just be like they're not going to just go up to the symbol that is Medicare and burn it to the ground. They're going to start just defunding it slowly over time. Like, because principally you understand the Liberal National Party don't like government funding things. They want to get rid of taxes and all that other kind of shit. It's just within their ideology. It's mechanically built in to their party that they don't want to do this. And yet it's a scare campaign, even though it is based on some level of evidence. But you can just dismiss it as a scare campaign.
Yeah. When this happened as well, specifically with the Medicare wineback, we were all having a group discussion about it, and this was some time ago, but we're having a discussion about it. One of our friends said, oh, well, if not many people need this procedure, why not just cut it? And then again, a friend of mine turned around and said, well, because you might need it one day. Simple as that. The Liberal Party have been quite vocal in about how they want to switch to privatized medicine. We've seen what happens to the Americans. We don't want that system here. And that's coming from someone who has top tier private health cover. And I can tell you right now, when I went in for my last back operation, and I'll need to go in for more back operations in the future, I still had to pay out $5,000. That's the system that they want us to move to. When you go and get, and the only reason that I had to get that procedure privately was because it needed to be done quickly. And the problem is, because we've underfunded Medicare so badly, we've got doctors and surgeons who aren't able to have a lifestyle out of that system. And, that's why a lot of surgeons move into the private system, because they can make more money. It's as simple as that. So what we need to do is make sure that our government is providing the lifestyle required for doctors and surgeons, so that we have access to all of these, this medical care. Because it's as simple as that. The majority of people are our workforce in this country. If you maintain the health of your workforce, you're going to have a strong economy. Boom, boom, boom. One,
keep
two,
working.
three.
Allows them to keep working. But anyway, so I also wanted to bring up one more thing in terms of the scare campaign stuff that PK neglected to mention. And the way that discussion is framed, it's like they're bringing up scare specific policy things and making them part of the scare campaign, right? But I want to point out that the entirety of the Liberal Party platform is a scare campaign, right? Yep. Because their whole narrative is that, we're the safe hands at the moment. Don't risk Labor coming in. That's a scare campaign. There is no evidence-based for Labor doing a bad job here.
Yep. It's again, it's the better the devil you know argument, which is a scare campaign, like you said.
Yeah. Right. So, again, one is functionally the bad thing, and then Labor might participate in it on a certain level, but the equating of the two makes it seem equal, like they're the same, but they're fundamentally not. And again, Labor is, and that whole thing about where's the big policies? Is reforming the aged care, child care, and Medicare not are those not policies?
Yeah, they're big policies.
Anyway, so that's the scare campaign stuff. Matt, what's your take on the on all of the trans stuff that keeps getting thrown into the news?
As I've said this before, I'll say it again. Culture war issues are fucking pointless. They're pointless to debate. The only thing that they do is create a scare campaign, which is what we've just been talking about. Over in America, we saw that it was utilized to great effect by the Trump administration. Scare, scare, scare. The traditional values are disappearing. The culture war shit, and that is all it is simply a distraction. While the environment is burning down around us, while it's harder to get medical treatment, while our education standards are getting poorer, the last bastion of the conservative politician is always going to be these gender issues. So specifically to this, there is a liberal liberal candidate. Sorry, her name is Catherine
Deves. Yeah,
Deves.
I think it's Deves.
Now,
I think that's what I heard it being pronounced as.
Yep. So she refers to herself, and this is her words, not mine, as a radical feminist, which is it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting phrasing. And like Tommy alluded to, there's a term that we use for these people called a TERF.
It's interesting how, by their own logic, they call themselves a slur.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But okay.
Because what's interesting about the messaging here, so okay, let's say that you're playing the culture war card, which is what she's doing. She's talked about, we don't want transgendered people competing in sports to which their gender aligns to. That's the argument she's making. So number one, not a federal issue, because those sort of issues get dealt with by the sports governing bodies themselves, right? They all independently govern themselves. So number one, not a federal issue, which means it's a fucking non-issue anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the now obviously when I'm talking about that, I'm talking specifically to the rules that are in place with these different sporting codes. I'm not discussing the generalized issue of transgendered people's protection. That is a federal responsibility. So that's we'll put that to the side. I just want to make that clear before people start yelling at me on the internet. So what she's doing is she is going on the forefront of these transgender people, they're going to change the way we look at sport. They're going to ruin it for women. I am pro women. I'm a super feminist, and that's the standpoint I'm taking. But what's interesting about the messaging here is if you're going to present yourself to be transphobic, to be a non-progressive person, yet you're using words like feminist, you're going to confuse the base that would vote for you. Does that make sense, Tommy?
Yeah, a little bit.
Because generally people who are transphobic are also homophobic, who are also sexist, people who like to go back to the quote unquote traditional values of, your wife stays home and she cooks and cleans for you, while you go out and you earn a pay packet and you come home and she's meant to look after you like a slave. Those people generally all align together. It's really strange to me that she's playing the culture card, yet continues to refer to herself as a feminist. Now, as people have started digging through her life, and what's interesting is this article comes from news.com.au. So again, pardon me, sorry, bodily functions continue regardless of whether we're live or not. One of the things that's going on here is it's quite interesting because news.com has been discussing this, and the reason that they're doing it is because they know it's going to get clicks.
Yeah, it's cultural bullshit.
Yeah, it's clickable bullshit. What makes me think is that Devs is even worse than someone just playing the culture card is as people have been going through her online history, they've also found her describing gay newspapers as quote unquote the Rainbow Reich, which definitely says that this is a person who is, this is who she is. All right, this isn't this isn't an act. This isn't just culture war stuff. But this is someone.
Yeah, this isn't some kind of misunderstanding that she has.
Yes,
about
this
things.
Is someone who has held these beliefs. Absolutely. And this is the person, the broader issue here is this is the person that some members of the Liberal Party have said, look, we need to eject her. She's obviously simply a cult of personality. She's a dangerous individual with dangerous ideas. And they said, you will lose the election, putting her forward as a candidate. But the people within the Liberal Party who are still incredibly conservative, who still represent that insane evangelical right, they insist that she must remain there. But what's interesting is moderate liberals are saying, please get rid of her because she is going to lose her race. And at the end of the day, I honestly think she will. just this week as well, she held a, I guess, public forum where people could go and speak with her. And there was a gentleman who was found to be quite in opposition to her standpoints. He was ejected from the venue, being the RSL club that she was at. She didn't speak to media. She went straight to talk to the people who wanted to speak with her, which says volumes about who this person is. And honestly, you're dealing with a fanatical fundamentalist. You know, so it's definitely worth talking about. This is also someone that the Liberal Party leadership endorses. This is someone who the radical right faction within the Liberal Party endorses. This is someone who Tony Abbott endorses. And again, playing these sort of cards in this country may not be as effective as Australia, but I don't even believe she's playing a political card here, Tommy. I believe that this is exactly who this person is, and she's being very forthright with who she is and what she's all about.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like the other Liberal candidates, find it why they're fighting against it, because as we saw with the religious discrimination bill, there are many people in the Liberal ranks that are like quite progressive on that kind of stuff, and they're around in there and they know that person is like that, and they don't want them to be in Parliament to represent the people. But I will bring up this article by The Guardian, which is, they say, why some Conservatives see Catherine Deves as candidacy as a godsend, which is very interesting because I haven't seen this kind of take before. And the article is basically like, what this does. Okay, so one of the issues with her candidacy is actually very interesting from a tactics point of view, because Scott Morrison handpicked this candidate, right? He went above the Liberals selection process and was like, I'm picking you. And then she was in, right? And so now that she's getting some flack, he can't walk that back. He can't disendorse her or whatever. He has to stay in her camp, and so he's basically forced to do that. Like, he would do it anyway. He's very belligerent, but his line of defense of her is basically to say, "Oh, you know, I don't want people being cancelled," right? Doing that very right wing sort of talking point bullshit, and that has played into this what is happening right now, where apparently, anecdotally, they've had like a massive spike in like donations coming in. So they're like, yeah, we're getting a lot of stuff from, you know, leftist liberals, but we've gotten like a whole bunch of increases in donations, much more than you would normally.
Yeah, if you say the words cancel culture, it currently in Western society, you will see this massive outpouring of financial support. You know, and you know, that's just the fact of it. Which makes me sad, Tommy. It makes me sad because hardworking Australians get duped into this culture war bullshit, and they end up giving money to rat bags who will never, you know, the exact same thing happened over in America. Steve Bannon, for example, who was an advisor to the Trump administration, he said, well, you know, if the government's not going to build our wall, we're going to finance it ourselves. And then he stole all their money. And that was it. That's the end of the story. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. Is obviously they're going to donate to the Liberal political coffers. That's going to fill up. It's not going to benefit anyone.
Yeah, it's going to go to this candidate, and then they're probably just going to spend it. Well, like, this person might actually spend it on on her anti-trans crusade. Like, when this kind of stuff happens, when people get into the media spotlight and get like called out for their BS, sometimes they will absolutely triple down on that line of thinking, like J.K. Rowling, like Graham Linehan. And so she might just do that, and all of this money is just going to get funneled into that kind of stuff potentially.
Yep.
Because like I don't know if it'll be effective. It might help them win. But as we see in this article by The Guardian as well, apparently they're getting outspent in these electorates by the Climate 200 candidates. The teal independents, as they like to call them. So
yeah, well, the Climate 200 people, for the most part, are what you would probably have referred to back in the day as liberal light. You know, they would have been moderate liberals. Those people were essentially kicked out of the structure of the Liberal campaign with Malcolm Turnbull's exodus. Well, I say exodus, he was kicked out of the party. When he left, well, when he was forced out, the moderate bastion of the Liberal Party took a massive hit. So those people were also very well financed. They were financially backed. And so those financial backers who now feel that they don't have a voice in the Liberal Party are essentially putting forward these Climate 200 independents. And that's going to take away votes from the Liberal Party. But the Liberal Party that remains still believes that the cancel culture, the culture war tactics are going to work for them. But Australia is just not that sort of, it's not a country where that works as effectively.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet anyway. You know, fingers crossed that it stands. Another reason, though, that the media is turning against Devs as a candidate is when on Friday night she did her politics in the pub event. She banned the media, all of the media. And it's one of those things that I find quite interesting, again, because this is replicated over in America. You've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who the establishment can't control. You know what I mean, Tommy? It's like right now, like the Liberal Party, they can't control what she does, because can you imagine a Liberal Party candidate not talking to the media, not allowing the media to come listen to them in this current state? That's why the media is turning against her, because she broke a rule. And so, like you said, Prime Minister Scott Morrison put her into that seat. He has to stand by it. And that was done at the behest of the evangelical right movement within his own party that keeps forcing him over a barrel. It was the same part of their party that jettisoned Malcolm Turnbull. Like, honestly, if Malcolm Turnbull had remained in charge of the Liberal Party, they would probably still be slam dunking elections to this date. But they have to keep bending over to a very small contingent in their party, which ultimately speaks about how weak they are.
Yeah, I mean, they might not, because one of the issues is the makeup of the Liberal Nationals, right? Because he was much more pragmatic, right? He was basically, in a way, a Labour politician in a Liberal camp, right? He basically just he became wealthy, and that's why he became Liberal, right? If he was in the same position, but he was a poor person, he'd be in the Labour camp. So his issue was always the divide between him and the Nationals. Like, he wanted to go progressive on green stuff. He probably would have liked a proper NBN, but he had a campaign against it. So there was always going to be that rift, and Labour could have capitalized on that. And I think at a certain point, and like, I don't think it was possible for him to continue leading the thing, because I think it was always destined to fall apart given the makeup of that party and how the Nationals are always going to like pull the Liberals to the right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When you have a person like Scott Morrison who doesn't give a shit about anything except power, then that's like the stability is sort of there. Like you have it because he's just willing to keep going, right?
Yeah. And going in further as well here. So, the seams are starting to show with this quote unquote captain's pick. It's also, and this comes from news.com.au. It's also been revealed in documents.
Can you link the article and I'll put it up on the thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me chuck this up here. It's interesting to get this sort of information from Murdoch Press, just because, she shunned them. That's the whole reason that these articles are being published there. It's because she shunned them. So I'll just chuck that into the chat there. People can have a look. And you'll probably see some like negative Albo stuff as well in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Secret docs lift the lid on Catherine Deves' past. Okay.
Yep. So if you scroll down just underneath where it says Catherine Deves' tweet about leading gay newspaper. So the comments emerged after Miss Deves, the candidate for Prime Minister, insists must not be silenced, ban the media from a politics in the pub event on Friday night. It has also been revealed in documents first reported by the Saturday Telegraph that Miss Deves told the Liberal Party in a nomination form that she has never posted anything online that was offensive in nature. The documents reveal Miss Deves is... Yeah. The documents reveal Ms. Steeves is not currently employed, but did work as a lawyer for a New South Wales firm from September 2021 to January this year. She previously worked as a paralegal. She lists all her social media accounts to the Liberal Party on the form dated March 10, before her entire history was wiped, just days before Scott Morrison shocked the Liberal Party by announcing her as captain's pick. The Prime Minister, who is resisting calls to dump Ms. Steeves, insists the comments are quote unquote in the past. So right there, you've got someone who is essentially shirking the rules of the Liberal Party. So the Liberal Party has done their vetting process. She has lied about it, scrubbed her social media. But as we know, scrubbing social media can be quite tricky, especially when you do have people in the political landscape. It's going to be, the work of their opponents to try and find as much dirt as they can. And it's quite difficult to scrub a lot of this sort of stuff, especially when you're posting to other Facebook pages. Like, you can delete nearly all of your comments from your personal account, but a lot of those comments will remain on other people's accounts. You can't delete everything. So obviously they didn't vet her properly. They didn't understand what they were bringing into their camp. And as Tommy said, you now have to deal with her because it is quote unquote a captain's pick. It goes further. So these comments are in the past. In fact, all of the social media posts were the last 2 years, and many were less than a year ago. So obviously not that far in the past. They include claims surrogacy is a human rights violation, the trans teenagers are surgically manipulated, and that there's a link between mutilated, and that there is a link between transvestitism and sexual predators, even serial killers. Now, this is something that I can speak to a little bit. Yeah,
that's
now
bullshit.
This is something that I get to speak to a little bit here.
Maybe if your link is basically just watching trans people as they are depicted in Hollywood, in movies, like, for fuck's, this is no statistical evidence of this at all.
Not at all. Now, I spruik this at the end of every stream, but I'm going to talk about it here. I work on a podcast called Weird Crap in Australia with my lovely wife and researcher, Holly Soul. We have also written, we've just finished writing our third book. Every single one of our books and many of our episodes of the podcast happen to talk about serial killers. Now, we have not covered a single transgendered serial killer in this country. Serial killers generally do not kill based out of transgenderism. They definitely kill out of sexuality because, if a serial killer, for example, happens to, how do I put it? If they're a straight heterosexual male and they're a serial killer, generally speaking, they will target straight heterosexual females. Or if it's a homosexual male killer, they will generally target homosexual victims, right? Because sexuality and sexual violence is linked with their psychology. So right there, talking about serial killers, what she is referring to, as Tommy alluded to there, is the Hollywood transgendered serial killer, your Texas Chainsaw Massacre, your Norman Bates in Psycho. And honestly, there are more serial killers with hockey masks and magic powers in Hollywood than there are with that particular archetype. That archetype was created based on a individual called Ed Gein. Ed Gein did unfortunately have some gender identity issues and turn people into suits, which is not nice. But he is the only case of that so far, or at least the most popular case. And because it was so popular back in the day, it was so sensational. Things like Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, lots of different stories were all based on that iteration. So yeah, it's very, very disingenuous to label transgendered people as serial killers, but like Tommy said, she's obviously basing that on films. The nomination form also confirms her candidacy was proposed by barrister Bertie Nolan, the now wife of her opponent, Sally Segelja's ex-husband, which is that has been not talked about a lot. I'm not going to go into the dynamics of a relationship that has obviously fallen apart here, but there is something to be said of the bias that's going on. While some have described Ms. Steeves as a conservative, in fact, she is a self-described TERF, which is a trans-exclusionatory radical feminist. The term rainbow Reich is often referred to in TERF online communities to suggest the trans movement is a totalitarian in nature and is destroying the LGBTI community. And of course, you wrap yourself up in all of these social terms to protect yourself from your own bias. Ms. Steeves has also reportedly referenced the late radical feminist Andrea Dworkin as a Jewish anti-pornography campaigner and rape survivor. Ms. Dworkin, one of the world's most famous and influential radical feminists in the 1980s, is famous for saying, "I really believe a woman has the right to execute a man who has raped her, and that sexual intercourse remains a means or the means of a sociologically making a woman inferior." Sorry, physiologically. Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah.
Communicating to her cell by cell her own inferior status, pushing and thrusting until she gives in.
Okay. Yeah, I remember this quote.
News.com.au does not suggest Ms. Steeves supports these statements. Meanwhile, the Saturday Telegraph has revealed that Ms. Steeves explicitly declared to Liberal Party's officials how she had been involved in quote-unquote controversial issues that could become a part of the federal election campaign ahead of her selection as the Warringal candidate. However, in response to a question on the Warringa, thank you, Tommy. However, in response to a question from the Forum about social media posts, Ms. Steeves, who states she was a Liberal Party member in 2011, 2017, and applied on September 21, 2021, denied making any extreme or offensive comments. So the fact that she is now going to ignore the media means that they are going to pull everything apart.
I think we probably don't need to go on and read the whole thing. There's one thing I found interesting was, a staff at the RSL said they had been instructed by the Liberal Party not to let media in. Quote, "They are all for freedom of speech, just as long as it's Liberal Party speech," which is this, and that's perfect, right? And so this random staffer, I'm hoping he's just a random punter who's aware of this kind of stuff and not just a lefty. But this is very indicative of the right. They always spruik free speech, but then but anytime it's a speech from people they don't like, they shut it down.
Yep.
They use it as a dog whistle.
Absolutely. Now, you're going to encounter this also on the far left side of politics, of course. Again, we've got to be fair in saying that. Sometimes you will encounter it. But at the moment, when it comes to and when I say that, generally it's people on the very radical left side of the left side of politics. But when we're talking about cancel culture, it is predominantly every single tier of the right that tell you that their voices are being silenced, that they're not allowed to speak, yet they will tell every single one of us that we're not allowed to voice our concerns, we're not allowed to voice our issues. It's been one of the most hypocritical points that the right has been able to wedge into elections over the last 6 odd years. Unfortunately, it for some reason, it seems to work for them. So you'll often have people say, "Oh, well, mate, I don't want to be cancelled. I want to be able to say what I want." And then I'll turn around and go, "Yeah, I do too. I think that we should maintain good, solid civil rights for homosexuals." They go, "Oh, I don't want you to say that, mate." And it's like, well, didn't you just say I was allowed to say whatever I want? And you want to say whatever you want? And because often you'll find that these conservatives are the most thin-skinned fucking people you're ever going to come across. And they want everyone else to shut up, and it has to be their speaking points, and that's it. They don't want free speech. They want their speech. And obviously this candidate is very much a part of that, but she has shunned the media, so she's now going to be absolutely ripped apart. And like Tommy said, Scott Morrison now has to deal with it. He's going to have to accept it. And they've probably lost that campaign in that area as well. I can't imagine the incumbent losing to her.
What's also interesting about that is that like because of the trans stuff, that affects stuff in the surrounding area as well. So that's why the other Liberal Party people are very concerned about it, because they might lose their seats. So even if the article I brought up before where they said that like they're getting a massive influx of donations. That's probably only going into her candidacy. And if she loses it anyway, it's sort of wasted because the issue that the other Liberals had was that it's going to affect their candidacy.
Yeah.
Right? You can burn your own bridge, just don't burn ours. And so I think that is something that could also play. It's really annoying that the trans people are getting like thrown into this when it's like their lives shouldn't be used as a political wedge like this. But hopefully at the very least, maybe it'll show through this election campaign that TERFs are not accepted and they just get crushed in elections. That would be good. I think that would be a good outcome to come of this. Them getting brought into all this stuff. I also want to point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would hate to see a world that we live in where people can wrap themselves up in progressive ideology, to essentially protect themselves from being bigots. Like, I don't want to see that world. I don't want to see those people get elected. She's not really a feminist. She's an evangelical fundamentalist, and those people are totalitarian dictators. They always have been. And I would hate for people to go, oh, well, she's sort of on the left because she said she's a feminist, and she's kind of on the left because she says she's trying to project the rights of homosexual and lesbian people. And it's like, no, she's not. And I don't want to see people like that being allowed to get away with wrapping themselves up in those identities.
I don't think that'll work very well. Like, again, she calls herself a TERF. She calls herself a radical feminist. I think enough people, especially in the LGBTI community, know what that is to be like, nah, you don't represent us, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, they can smell them out.
Also want to bring up very quickly, Scott Morrison is not doing a press conference today.
That's interesting.
Well, it is interesting because he keeps whinging at Albanese for, like there was an attack line that he had about how Albanese isn't going to be there, like he's lazy, he should be doing stuff on the campaign trail, like even though he's sick or whatever. And here he is just not doing press conference. And this should go to show, like, again, you can attack Morrison on going missing. This just sets it up. But that's the thing is, this motherfucker is too goddamn lazy for his own good. Like, he's just a lazy motherfucker. And then so this is, but I assume this is going to get no more coverage than this thing that I'm reading right now. So.
Yep.
I wanted to point it out.
Murdoch Media will just write another 2 or 3 articles on Kim Kardashian to fill the gap, I'm sure.
Yeah, they'll do some cultural bullshit.
But what is interesting with him not doing a conference today would it actually be, and speaking about his lack of prowess when it comes to election campaigning. So if you go to the main page of news.com.au today, the one of the headlines towards the top is about Deeves. So what Morrison should be doing right now is absolutely filling that space, because the media is pissed off that they were banned from attending that time that they were banned from attending that event. It's pissed them off. They're just going to keep talking about it. So right now, today would be the perfect time to do a press conference so that he could push that story down on major news websites, but he's too stupid to fucking realize.
I don't know. Like, I think he wants that up because, again, it takes the heat off of him, though.
Yeah, but it's so damaging to him, though. Like, it takes the heat off him, but every single article talks about how he put her forward. You know what I mean?
It's not that big a part of the article, though. Like, the focus, generally speaking, is on her, and I think she's just going to weather that. Like, she's going to be the smoke grenade that goes off. Like, she's going to not do anything, right? But she's going to give cover to everyone, to Morrison specifically and the Liberal Party, because all the hatred will just be on this person, and she's going to distract from, again, Morrison not being there. She's going to distract from like real policy issues. Like, this was what PK was talking about. Like, this kind of shit is why you're not going to get any policy discussions.
Yeah.
And we know that they have nothing on policy, and they can only drive their bullshit things for so long before it becomes insufferable. So when this stuff comes out, it just serves as a smokescreen. And that seat,
Absolutely.
they probably didn't give that much of a fuck about anyway because they weren't going to win it because of the swing to Stegel. So,
and what's also interesting too, like just looking at news.com's front page, an article, like a fluff piece that they wrote about 3 or 4 weeks ago, is now seen in prime position. We're an hour and a half after a Labor press conference, and nothing's been written about it.
yeah, of course not. I mean, look, I mean, even then, like the press conference was I don't remember, like I didn't catch the beginning of it. But they're probably not going to do anything controversial, so there's not really much else to say. I think the fact that that there isn't anything in there is good, because that means that their line of attack in the questioning didn't actually have any cut through to be worth writing about.
Yep.
So they didn't draw blood, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it could be seen as positive. I say that. Do we want to take a look at the polling data before we wrap it up?
It's not. I mean, I'll just look at Roy Morgan. But yeah, it's gone down. So that's a thing.
Why do you think the polling data is changing in that perspective? Because
it will do so, generally speaking. Like during elections, it always closes. But apparently, according to Roy Morgan, this is specifically on the gaff, which makes sense. The media coverage has been incredible. They blew that up way out of proportion. But I think given that it's only like a 1% swing, it isn't that bad. So, but he has narrowed in terms of the. I mean, they don't have it here, but in terms of the leadership stuff, Albanese lost way more on that specifically.
Yep.
To Morrison. So
Labor's still ahead, 10 points in the preferred party, which is pretty good. They've losing 3 points, I honestly think was expected. They'd sort of been in front by 13 percentage points leading up to the election campaign. They were always going to shed some of that, but I think 10% is still a pretty good lead at this point, if polling data is to be believed, and we've all been burnt before, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I still think a 10% lead is good. Once we start crossing down into about 5%, that's when it's anyone's game. So right now we're in the 10, which is still quite comfortable.
Yeah, I think as long as they keep the hold the line, it should be okay. The discipline that the ALP is showing, I think they'll probably be fine.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Well, I think they're a strong team. Albo will be back on his feet in the next couple of days. And what that's going to symbolize to the Australian people is he'll be down and out for a little bit, and then he'll get straight back up on his feet. So, this could all work out to be quite beneficial for him while, Scott Morrison ducks and covers. And like you said, Tommy throws smoke bombs at the media so he can sort of disappear again. They're going to have to fill those news voids with something, and Albo has a chance to be sort of the comeback kid as well. So people like an underdog. They always have.
Yeah, and so this is the news poll. Do they have any? No, I have to pay for that, right? So, no, okay. I mean, so Albanese has always trailed behind Scott Morrison on the PM front. I mean, that's to be expected. The media environment is such. It's what's really annoying. And I think we'll leave with this. I think we're supposed to look at candidates, but we don't. I forgot to look up any.
That's right. We're going to talk about the candidates for,
and policy.
Dixon, but we'll do that next one.
This went longer than I expected. But one thing that's really annoying, right? Anthony Albanese actually has an incredible story, right? There is no reason that this should be the case ever in a correct media environment, just a neutral one, right? Because his story is such that he grew up in public housing, right? He was raised by a single mom, okay? So he essentially grew up in basically a poverty situation. I assume, given those two things, that he went through public school, right? And so not only do you have a story that is like individually uplifting, that you in Australia can no matter how poor you are, no matter how bad your family situation is, you can make it, right? Not only do you have that story, it's emblematic of Australia and it's the strength of its institutions, that he was able to get public housing, that his mum probably got Centrelink payments or whatever, I assume, some kind of help there, but also the public school sector would have made him the person that he is today. And the fact that he's been in politics for, like, he's been in politics longer than Morrison has, right? And he is squeaky clean. That's why the only attacks they have against him are, oh, I guess you don't know who he is. But that's only because they are saying that rather than telling him the story that I have relayed to you, right? He should be being lionized as like the Aussie battler. That should be his story. The Aussie battler coming for the prime ministership. But that is not a story you're going to hear because they don't want that to be the case. They just want this idiot to still be in power because it makes them richer.
Exactly right. Look, I'm not going to add anything to that, Tommy. I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I totally agree.
But yeah, there's there's 3 more weeks of this. This week will be the teams fighting it out, and the teams versus Scott Morrison is probably what's going to happen later down the line. And I guess we'll see what happens. It's going to be another short week because there's another public holiday. Yeah. But from there, I think one of my goals might be to like actually make some like videos rather than just do the streams on this kind of stuff, because those are like a lot easier to share. But yeah, anyway, that's I think we'll continue to do this. I think this is still, at least for me, these streams are quite cathartic because there's just this. I watch this stuff all the time, and it's just me yelling at a TV for a week straight, and then I come on here and I get to share that with people. It feels like a bit of a release. So it's been good. So we'll continue that, and maybe there'll be some videos on the channel that are more specifically geared for shareability. But that's it for us this week. Matt, why don't you do your shout outs?
Yes. So if you'd like to check out some more of my work, once a week we release a podcast, Weird Crap in Australia. You can find that on anywhere you listen to podcasts. I've also got a new book coming out, Weird Crap in Australia, Volume 3, which I co-wrote with my wife, Holly. That's coming out in September. Volume 1 and 2, you can pick up right now from impactcomics.com.au and lulu.com. And you can also grab that from the Kindle ebook store. What else? And I've got a comic out as well, Killaroo Semper Fidelius, which is also available from your local comic book retailer. Go support those guys. You can also grab that from killaroo.com.au. Oh, sorry, killaroo.com. And you can find me on all the social medias. The Modern Meltdown, Weird Crap in Australia on Facebook and Instagram, and you can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @WeirdCrapInAus, AUS.
Cool. All right. And for me, I actually have something to plug this week, which is cool. So if you go to my channel, my other channel, it's just my name. It's Tommy Din. I have a video that I'm going to make public right now. Matt, do you remember last night when I was talking to you when we left the conversation and you were like, oh, I got to do a recording?
Yep.
I spent like the next 4 hours trying to figure out these rendering issues I had to get this up. So I've put a lot of work into figuring out what the hell was going on and fix them. So I have a video that's up now that you should watch. And there's something really like I thought was super cool that I'll share with you now. It just looks cool. All right, that's it. I'm not going to play the whole video, but it looks cool. So I'm going to play it and then we will sign out. It's just a chapter transition. It's also, the game is actually about democracy. It has a democracy in it, so it's kind of relevant somewhat to this channel because it is a little bit political. So go check it out if you're keen on video game analysis.
Yes. I don't go into video game analysis too much, but my brother, who is a very hard person to win over, absolutely loves Tommy's analysis when it comes to video games. So I consider that a pretty good endorsement. If you would like to check that out.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. All right, we will see you all next week.
Bye for now.